We're going to look at a couple more examples of nonlinear systems in lesson 95. If you want to see how they look graphed, you can look in the lesson. But we're going to talk about the algebra side of it right now. Example 1 gives us what would look to be a substitution or elimination type problem. So, different ways you could do this. I am going to show you the way of getting x by itself in the bottom. Okay, so we have xy equals, or x times y equals 4. So to get x by itself, I divide by y. All right, so I get left with x equals 4y. And so then what happens is I'm going to plug this in for x, so 6 times 4 over y minus y equals 5. Multiply, so that become 24y, or sorry, 24 over y. Okay, we get to this point. Well, we want to get rid of y in the denominator, or we want to get rid of a denominator in general. So I'm going to multiply by the least common denominator. Least common denominator would be y, so I need to multiply here by y, here by y, and here by y. So that ends up leaving me with 24, because those cancel out, minus y squared equals 5y. 24 minus y squared equals 5y. Now what we want to do is get this y squared positive, so I'm going to add it to the other side. I'm going to get this to the other side to create something that we could factor possibly. So y squared equals, so y squared plus 5y minus 24 equals 0. So now I'm going to look at, is there anything that can multiply to be negative 24 and positive 5? Well, we could do positive 8 and negative 3 for our equations. So y plus 8 equals 0, and y minus 3 equals 0. So therefore, for y, so y equals a negative 8 and a positive 3, when we simplify for y. So that's how you do y. So now we can solve for x because we know two of our numbers. So let's, it doesn't matter what we look at, we can look right here. All right, let's say we're plugging in x times negative 8 equals 4. All right, I'll write it this way so you can see it better. Negative 8 times x divided by negative 8. So that would be negative 1/2. So when y is negative 8, x would be negative 1/2. All right, now let's see what would happen if I plug in 3 for y. So that becomes 3x equals 4, just plugging it in right here. So divide by 3. So when y equals 3, x would be 4 over 3. So those would be my two solutions for x and y. You can totally subtract 6x and make y positive and do it that way. You're still going to have to factor an x squared out and whatnot, but that is a way that you can solve for that equation. Now let's look at example 2. Now if you want to know what kind of nonlinear equation we're solving for here, this would be a circle, right? Because x squared plus y squared equals radius squared. That's your equation of a circle. But anyways, to solve for this, we can use substitution or elimination. Well, we have a positive y squared and a negative y squared, so therefore those can cross out when we solve. So we add our x squared and 2 squared and get 3x squared. 9 minus 6 equals 3. All right, so the y squared is canceled out. So that works out nice for us. Divide by 3. X squared equals 1. Now when we square root here, all right, when we square root, we get square root of 1, but we have the plus or minus. Remember the plus or minus. Now obviously square root of 1 is 1. So we have a plus or minus 1 for x. So I'm going to write over here each of those. So when x is 1, let's see what y would be. Okay, going to plug in right here. So and x squared plus y squared equals 9. If x is 1, we'd be here, subtract the 1, so y squared equals 8. Y squared equals 8, square root, that becomes plus or minus. So we have y equals plus or minus 8. Or square root of 8. Now square root of 8 can factor. I'm going to factor it right here. Square root of 8 factored. So that'd be 2 radical 2. Right? 2 radical 2. So when x is positive 1, y is going to be a plus or minus 2 radical 2 is how we can write the answer. So there is one system of equations right there. Now we're going to look at the negative one. So plug in. Say this is a negative 1 being plugged in. Oh, well, negative 1 squared, that's going to be a positive 1. So we're actually right back to where we started. So we're going to end up, I'm not going to solve it all, it's the same thing as the last one. We end up getting a plus or minus 2 square root of 2. So there's our two equations, and you just use substitution or elimination.